Whither Malchut. Welcome to our 10th in a continuing series on the book of Shmuel, or Samuel, and the founding of Jewish monarchy, episode 10. This week, we answer the questions from chapter 8 and the previous shiur, and discuss how the request for kingship can create two distinct offices, that of ruler and that of prophet, both dependent on one another for success. We also try to uncover how the events in chapter 8 are connected to the wildly different perspective in chapter 9. All this and more. Thanks for joining us, and please consider sharing this recording with others.
Anna? Okay, so let's try to take the best shot that I can at answering them. So to answer at least question number one and maybe question number two, what I would like to posit for you is that there are essentially three types of rulers among the Jewish people, and all three of them serve in the capacity of service. So ruler number one is the Kohen, or the Kohen Gadol. The job of the Kohen is to serve in the capacity of service in helping the Jewish people connect to God, right? That's the medium of that is korbanos. You want to bring the average Jewish person closer to God or repair their relationship with God, you bring a korban, right? That's leadership type number one. Leadership type number two is the opposite. That is prophet. Prophet serves the people by being an intermediary between God to the people, right? And the method that he uses to connect God to the people is prophecy. So Kohen is people to God, Navi is God to people. The third one is king. King is people to people. It's interpersonal. It's judging the people, protecting the people, whatever the interaction is, that is the role of king. So each one has
Hence
their...
God's statement to Shmuel, they've rejected me. It's not you, it's me.
Right, so we're going to get to all of that. So the first question we asked was...
Yeah, but it's a theocratic. It's a theocratic.
I'm going to argue that
dynasty.
I'm going to argue that it's not, and I'll explain to you why. But let's take it one step at a time. So the first question was why isn't Shmuel and Shmuel's children punished the same way Eli and Eli's children are punished? Answer: because Eli and Eli's children undermined the entire role of kahuna. They didn't do a personal sin. They didn't speak lashon hara. And in fact the psukim that talk about they were sleeping with married women, that doesn't get mentioned at all. What they're held accountable for is abuse of their office. Right? They undermined the office of kahuna. They aggregated the relationship to themselves. They told the people, even before you bring the korban the way it's supposed to be brought, I want you to give me the meat. Right? They made a mockery of kahuna. So the punishment is reflective of what they did to the office, not what they did as people. Shmuel's sons didn't have that problem. Shmuel's sons didn't undo the office of prophecy. They weren't false prophets. They didn't tell people not to listen to prophecy. They did a personal sin. They were involved in batzek, whatever it was that was undermining.
Did they have an office? Or did they have...
Their office was judge. They were shoftim. But their sin was localized to that. It didn't undermine the office of prophecy. Now, when Shmuel...
They were shoftim?
Yes, they were shoftim. Not shoftim like in Sefer Shoftim. They were local magistrates.
Okay.
So when God is taking into consideration their sin, it hasn't risen to the level of undermining the office of prophet. So therefore, the punishment is localized and not global the way it was with the sons of Eli. Now, the question number two was, well, the people express a problem with dynastic leadership, and yet they ask for dynastic leadership. The answer there is, again, the people are expressing to Shmuel that he is not a dynastic leader, right? Shmuel says to the people, my sons are going to rule after me, right? Because I am essentially acting like a king, and they're next in line. And so it doesn't matter if they sin, because there's dynastic leadership, and you have to ignore the fact that they are sinning, because what counts is the office. And the people say, appoint a king for us, implying you are not the king, right? If you are not the king, then
Then it's not dynastic.
right, then it's not dynastic. So it's not that they are pointing out a flaw in dynastic leadership. They are saying dynastic leadership doesn't apply to you, Shmuel. You're a navi. Your office is not dynastic. It's navi office. You thought you were a king,
we don't see you as king. And in fact, the pasuk tells us, "Som tasim alech hamelech," right? The people have to decide that the person is the king. If the people all get together and say, "Shmuel, you're not our king," then you're not our king, right? What they then do, in effect, is they sever the theocratic office. They're looking specifically for a king who is not connected to God.
Sounds like consent of the government. The governed.
They are looking for no. I would say they're still looking for a theocratic dynasty
Why?
because that is the way the checks and balances is. That's the whole idea.
Well, so that's what Shmuel points out to them. What Shmuel says to them is, if Shmuel or a Navi was the king, so then the people have no choice but to listen to the king because everything the king says comes directly from God, right? The people are asking essentially for a flawed leader, and what Shmuel answers to them is that's exactly what you're going to get. You're going what you're prioritizing is safety, right? So this is the inherent flaw in any government, which is you have to aggregate enough power to allow the leader to protect you, but in aggregating that power, you're now allowing that same leader to put you in jeopardy, right? If he can protect you, he can hurt you.
Correct.
What?
But the Jewish concept of a melech is a limited melech in so much as there are checks and balances.
So
And those checks and balances severely restrain the king's abilities to.
how so?
There's not a lot of checks and balances.
In fact, what Shmuel is saying to them is just the opposite. He's saying there really are no checks and balances. I know the Torah says he can't have too many horses and too many blah blah blah, but guess what? Within the realm of what he can do,
and he has to follow Torah.
and he has to follow Torah. But within the realm of what he can do, he can be a tyrant. He can take your kids and put them to work. He can take your olive groves, and he can and he will, and you're going to cry out to God. Shmuel ends with a prophecy. You're not going to like how this plays out. And what's more,
But at the end of the day, again, they're governed. The Malchus in theory, because the reality is it didn't really come into that way, but it is governed by a set of rules.
So what
a religious set of rules. Again, most of the Malchus never really
lived up to that.
No,
the ideal. You're saying the ideal.
The ideal.
Yeah, but
concept.
even the ideal, you know,
the ideal is limited.
What Moshe is saying is even the ideal, like the guy can really make life miserable for people. You can be manubal.
Manubal b'rshus Torah.
There you go. That's the word.
But it still needs
the
to be
king,
Rishus of Torah.
It doesn't matter. Right. Again, if he's doing it in the Rishus of Torah, guess what? Life can still stink. Okay.
I'm not gonna disagree,
you know what?
But the Nevi'im still. I mean, look what the Navi comes to David and says you're messing up. Here.
Correct. I think
and there are checks and balances.
I agree with you. I think what we're going to see the rest of Shmuel Aleph,
and also on Shaul. Look what they do with Shaul.
Yeah,
they tear the Malchus from.
Yeah, for sure.
So it isn't a autocratic, with no rules and no checks and balances.
Correct.
The execution of it is a little different.
Right. I think what we end up seeing for the rest of the book is sort of what you're describing, which is the Achilles heel of the king is that he needs input from God. And if you separate Navi from king, then the king is going to constantly be beholden to the Navi to be successful. The contrast we're going to get for the rest of the book is David is successful, Shaul is not. Why is David successful and Shaul is not? Because David has access to the Ratzon Hashem. David can ask the Urim V'Tumim, can ask a Navi, can whatever. He has godly.
But even David fails.
I'm not saying David doesn't fail. What I'm saying is the contrast between Shaul and David is there to illustrate to us for the rest of the book that this decision that the people made to separate prophet from king and create essentially, right? Shofet used to be God says go lead the people. Now the Navi has no army anymore. Used to be the Navi, the Shofet, who was appointed by God, would muster all the people together. Shmuel can't do that, right? Shmuel can't say, "Let's gather the armies and go fight anymore," like he did in the seventh parak. Now it's up to the king to decide what the army does, right? So the king and the navi have to work together, and if they don't work together, right, the next couple chapters are going to be Shmuel essentially rubbing it in Shaul's face. Spoiler alert: Shaul gets anointed as king, and then everything he does is wrong in Shmuel's eyes. He has to wait for Shmuel to show up, and Shmuel tells him, "Here's what you're going to do. You have to go here and do this."
The checks and balances.
The checks and balances. And the second he strays from that relationship,
he gets whacked.
He falls out of favor and does not and has no access to the will of God, to the point where at the end of his life he has to go seek Shmuel in the afterlife to find out what God wants from him. That's the only way he feels he can be successful. You were going to say something.
Right. Who fell out of favor? Shmuel or
Shaul falls out of favor,
Shmuel.
and right, Shaul, the second he is not connected to Shmuel and therefore the will of God, he falls out of favor, and David is on the ascendancy because David has the access to the Urim V'Tumim, the whatever he's going to access in order to find out what God wants him to do.
But within each melech, there was only one navi.
For each melech, no, there's more.
No.
Yeah,
It wasn't like the hand of the king.
No.
right.
Yeah.
No.
We're all thinking.
Oh, it's
Game of
almost Game of
here.
Thrones,
Come
yeah.
on.
No, it depends on the Malchus.
Right, for
The
sure.
crown and the church, or the twin pillars of King's
Yes.
Land,
But-
something
right,
like that.
But they didn't necessarily have. It wasn't like.
No, there wasn't
crown in the
like a
face.
designated prophet. No.
And some of them had none.
Right.
So so
They were evil.
they were able because they're none, or they.
Yeah.
Or they just,
There were no checks and balances.
There were no checks and balances.
So they almost like were. It's almost like out of their hero, right? They didn't have any guidance, so therefore they.
They didn't want guidance.
What do you mean?
They didn't want
I'm saying,
guidance.
but they didn't purposely
Yes, they
negate.
did.
They wanted to live a life outside of Torah, so
Correct.
they banished real prophets
Reveals.
from the court,
Correct.
and therefore they you reap what you sow.
So there were prophets in that generation, let's say, or that time. They just went into court.
Right.
Say, or-
Something like that.
Potentially, but there were times when there were no Nevi'im,
Right.
where the world Nevi'im were killed out.
Right.
Right.
Um,
With the.
So I think that gets us.
Oh, no, I'm saying we learned with. Who was the one who killed him in the VM?
Oh, that's
King
later.
Achav.
Yeah,
He
Achav
killed most. No, but Ovadia spared a bunch of them.
Right. So I think that gets us to our fourth question.
Unbeknownst.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that gets us to our fourth question of why do we end in such a anticlimactic way at the end of the 8th chapter with, okay, we're going to appoint a king. No, actually, we're just going to send everybody home. And I think that's the beginning of Shmuel essentially rubbing it in the face of the people, saying, no, we're going to do what I decide we do. You can't just have a king without a Navi. Go home. I'll figure it out. I'll let you know. That doesn't work so well for Shmuel, and that's what we're going to see now in the 9th chapter, where he actually has to anoint Shaul as king. Shmuel essentially has been downgraded. He's no longer a Navi. He's some we'll call it.
An errand.
No, he's like a seer, an oracle,
He's up on the hill.
A wise man.
yeah, like a hermit. Right, he's a hermit, sort of out on his own. We'll see. Instead of me kind of foreshadowing, let's read the 9th parak as quickly as we can, so we can try to get through this story. Vayhi ish mi binyamin. There is this man, and when we say ish, we mean he's a man of substance from Binyamin. Ushmo Kish, and his name was Kish ben Aviel ben Sror ben Barachot ben Afiach, and he comes from a very well-polished lineage, and they talk about all they darshan these different names. Ben Ishimini, and he is a son of a Benjaminite, even though we told you he was an Ish Binyamin. Gibor Chayil, and he is a man of valor or substance, is how they translate it over here. This sounds very flowery and very much like this is the guy I want for king.
Also
right?
evokes the imagery of Purim almost.
Right, right. You have Mordechai. Right, when you trace people's lineage, usually you're doing it to show that they come from very, honorable, polished stock.
I am Grog, son of Grog.
Right.
First of my name.
Yeah, exactly.
I think all of this is done intentionally to undermine Shaul, meaning we're told about this man named Kish, who is a Gibor Chayil. He's an Ish. He comes from a great lineage. That's the guy you want for king, right? Not king. You know who's going to be the king? His son. And if one thing we've learned from Shmuel so far is great dads usually have kind of mediocre kids, right? So we're teeing this up on purpose. We're giving you Kish's lineage and all the amazing things about him to tell you that's not the guy who's going to be king. You know who's going to be king? The guy who kind of wanders around looking for donkeys.
That's
Below,
that's like a comedy sketch.
yeah,
Like
that's what this is. We get more.
like there was like a famous cartoon like this is Johnny. He is he's the head of the track team and he's like an all-star and he's the homecoming king. This is not his story. This
Right.
is Joe's story over here. Like,
That's exactly
the
what
nerd
this
over
is.
here. This is his story.
Right. There's no reason for the camera to be focused on Kish. The story is about Shaul. The
Right.
reason we're focused so much on Kish is to tell you, hey, the guy we're going to talk about is not that guy. Velo haya ben, and he has a son who Shmo Shaul, and his name is Shaul. He is Bahor, he's young, Vatov. Now I'm going to leave Tov untranslated for a minute. So yeah, I've seen choice, but I think really Bachor is here to describe his age. V'tov, and he is Tov. Ve'ein ish mi b'nei Yisrael Tov mimenu, and there is nobody who is more Tov than Shaul. Mishichmo v'amala gavo mikol ha'am, and from his shoulders and up, he is taller than everybody. So without exception, all the Rishonim translate Tov here as handsome. He is not Tov in. So later on, like Malbim will try to read in like, oh, he has good midos, right? But essentially, what we're getting a description over here is this guy's camera ready, right? He is super handsome, tall, strapping young man.
Yeah.
But
so
that's all I know about him so far. Go ahead.
Right. So my question is, Pashut Pshat.
Mm-hmm.
How is it that you're getting this comedic interpretation and not, hey, this is the thing, and here's this guy, he's handsome, he's good, he's this, he's that. Like, how do you not get it as a continuation of this, presenting Shaul?
Let's keep reading. You'll tell me if you agree with the
Lashon is
reading.
weird.
Yeah.
Shoulders up, he's taller than everybody else.
Yes. Hold on to
And
that.
he's-
The
then
shoulder
there's
thing
no
is going to
he
be
is good
really
as him.
important.
It just sounds like he has a tremendously large neck.
Right. So I think that it's sort of a turn of phrase. Like he's head and shoulders above everybody else.
Yeah, but it's also like, I mean, that's a
But
big
hold on
statement
to it.
for.
Yes.
for
Hold on to it. It's going to
For
be really
scripture
important.
to say there's nobody better than him, like that you could read it Pshat that there's nobody better than him.
I'm just telling you what the Rishonim do. All the Rishonim read it as more handsome.
Right.
Thank you. Right. So he's Gavo Mikol Ha'am. And here is his story. Tovadna ha'osanos leKish avi Shaul, and the donkeys of Kish, the father of Shaul, were lost. Vayomer Kish el Shaul beno, and Kish says to his son Shaul, Kachna itcha et echa me'anarim. Take one of the they translate here as servants. I think the word na'arim here is used intentionally because we've been calling all the important people na'arim, right? Shmuel was referred to as a nar. Shaul, Eli's sons are called na'arim. We contrasted that with Moshe. So we want you, Shaul, to go with a nar. V'kum lech bakeshet ha'osanos. Go look for the donkeys. Now, the reason I told you to hold on to Shechmo Vamala is because I think there is another layer in this story that we're going to try. The Shechmo Vilamala, from his shoulders and above, he's taller than everybody else. I think there's another layer in the story, and I'm going to try to tease it out as we go through the parak, which is there is another story in the Chumash where we talk about we use sort of the same words, which is the story of Dinah. Dinah was taken by
Shechem
ben
Chamor.
Shechem, shoulder, which is what Shaul is. Ben Chamor, the son of a donkey. Right?
That's
Shaul,
weird.
the guy who is shoulders taller than everybody, is out looking for donkeys. That is, I believe, intentional, and I'm going to try to prove that as we go. So the story, what the narrator is telling us in the story is Shaul's father comes to him and says, "My donkeys are lost. Someone left the pen open. The donkeys are gone. Go grab a boy and go find them." So he's off. The guy who is shoulders taller than everyone is out looking for donkeys, and we have a story in Bereshis of a guy who takes seemingly he's the villain who takes Dinah, and his name is Shoulders, the son of Donkey. That's the literal translation of his name. Weird?
But theoretically,
Yeah, that's very weird.
besides
Is there any
physical
rape in Shell's
attributes,
story?
Wait, we're gonna get next paragraph.
maybe they were referring to just his mental acuity.
Mishichmo v'mal. Okay, so
Yeah.
I want you to hear the
And
next
like,
couple of
focusing
psukim and
just
tell me
on,
what you
like, the
think.
head, and
Wait,
you're like,
what's the question?
Maybe
he's
shoulder
just
maybe
smarter.
shoulder and taller means that he's smarter than everybody.
Right.
focusing on the head,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's see how this bears out. Charles is attacking my comedic reading, and you're
No,
saying
I actually
maybe he's
love
actually
that. I actually love your interpretation, and I've never heard it before, and it's fascinating to me.
it,
I just want to say,
let's
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 test
hear it
the
out.
strength of it.
Vayavor Bahar Ephraim. So they go traveling through the mountains of Ephraim. Vayavor Be'eretz Shalisha. They go through this land of Shalisha. V'lo matzo. They can't find the donkeys. V'yavru Be'eretz Sha'alim. They go through this third land, Sha'alim V'ayin, and it's not there. V'yavor Be'eretz Yemini. They travel through the Binyamin territory. V'lo matzu. They can't find these donkeys. Hema Ba'u Be'eretz Tzuf. So now they come to the land of Tzuf. Tzuf, you will remember from the first pasuk in the first parak of this book, is where Shmuel is from. V'Shaul Amar Lenaro, and Shaul says to his young man, Asher Imo, who's with him, L'cha v'nashuva, let's go back. Pen Yechdal Avi min haosanos v'dag lanu, lest my father stop worrying about the donkeys and start worrying about us, right? We've been gone, we've hiked through many a territory, we can't find the donkeys, forget it, let's go back. Vayomer lo, and the nar, nameless attendee, we'll call him, says to Shmuel, Hine na ish Elohim ba'ir hazos v'ha'ish nechbad kol asher yidaber bo yavo. There's a ish Elohim.
Well, first of all, he tells him no.
Right. Right. First of all, he says no. No, he doesn't say no. It's lo lamed aleph. Vayomer lo. The nar responds. Hine na ish Elohim ba'ir hazos. There is a man of God in this town. Now, that is a weird way to refer to Shmuel. Shmuel is not an Ish Elohim. We had an Ish Elohim back in like the second parak. He was the nameless guy who told Eli, your sons are bad, right? Now suddenly Shmuel is not a Navi.
Isn't that like one of the highest approbations?
Ish Elohim?
Right. Like
I don't know.
Moshe gets called Ish Elohim. I heard a drasha about Elisha, a Navi, that when he's on his highest level, he's called Ish Elohim.
Could be.
And then when he has to go back and hang out with the people, like then he's just called like a Navi, or like he loses the title. And yet we see that he went down, which means it's better to be with the Tzibur, even if it means you're holding on a lower level. Like
could be. I'm not saying no. All I'm saying is we were told originally Shmuel is famous. From Dan to Beersheba, everybody knows this guy, right?
Why does he say, hey, Shmuel lives here?
Yeah. We get no name. He's now called Ish Elohim, which was the nameless character we had before. And by the way, he's in this city, V'ha'ish nichbad, and he's very honorable. Everything he says comes to pass. Ata nel chasham. We should go there. Ulay yagid lanu es darkenu. Maybe he can tell us where we've been. Like maybe we've been so turned around we don't even know the way we came from. Asher halachnu Allah, the way that we had set out. This is the idea of the nar, not of Shmuel, right? Shmuel's like, I'm sorry, Shaul. Shaul is let's go back. Nar is let's go ask God or the Navi what to do. Vayomer Shaul Naro. So Shaul responds to the nar. Hine v'hine nelech uman navi leish ki halechem azal mikelenu utishura ein lahavi leish haElohim ma'itanu. What am I supposed to do? Show up empty-handed? I have nothing to give this guy. I think there's a play on words over here. V'hine nelech uman navi leish. He says, "What am I going to be navi to the navi?"
Right. What am I
But he
going to
doesn't
bring
call
this
him
guy?
right. He doesn't call him the navi. He calls him the ish, and he makes it sound like this is a guy who does kind of parlor tricks. Like I can't show up and not pay him. I have to bring him something, and I don't have anything to pay this guy. So forget it.
But it's kind of funny. Like Shell's making a pun. Like
yeah, what am I going to be navi to the navi? Because I don't have any bread, and what do we got over here? There's no food in our bags. The food in our bags is all gone, and there's nothing we can bring the man of God as a present. What have we got? Right?
Which also seems to imply, I mean, okay, that implies sort of like a flightiness. Like, hey, you guys didn't prepare enough for this trip, and you got lost, and like...
And you got lost, you ran out of bread, like...
Yeah, like what are you thinking? Like,
You've now given up when you have nothing. You
right.
have not a penny to your name. You don't know where you are. You're not even going to ask this guy where the donkeys are.
Right.
What we just said was, let's ask him how we can get back, because we
Right.
didn't even Hansel and Gretel this thing.
Right.
We have no. Vayosef Hanar. So again, Shmuel is all about inaction. I don't want to do it. It's not going to work. Vayosef Hanar la'anos es Shaul. And now the Nar again answers Shaul Vayomer. Hine nimtza biadi reva shekel kasev. I've got probably like $5 in my pocket. V'nasati li'ish Elohim, and we'll give it to this man of God. V'higi lanu es darkenu, and he'll tell us about our travels. Now the narrator interjects. By the way, says the narrator, the next part is not going to make sense to you unless I give you the following information. Lifanim b'Yisrael, way back when in ancient times, ko amar ha'ish belechto lidrosh Elohim. This is how people used to talk when they would go to seek out God. Lechu v'nelcha ad haroeh. We should go to the seer, the roeh. Ki l'navi hayom yikra lifanim haroeh. Because nowadays, what we call him a navi, he used to be called a roeh. Okay, so if you want to know why he's about to call him a roeh, the narrator wants to give you that information. Yeah, just call him Navi. Like you're writing the book, just call him Navi, right?
Right.
Vayomer Shaul and Aro. So Shaul again goes back to his nar and he says, Tov devarecha, you're right. Lecha lecha, let's go v'nelcha, and they went. Lecha nelecha. We should let us certainly go. Yeah. Vayelchu el ha'ir asher sham ish Elohim. So they go. Shaul is following the guidance of somebody else, right? It doesn't sound to me like a natural born leader, right? Especially if you think about the people came to Shmuel and they said, we want a king who will fight our wars and protect us. This is not the guy who is the warrior, right? That was Kish. Kish was Gibor Chayo. This is the guy who follows the advice of the Nar. He's not anyone who is leading anybody.
Right. And if it's supposed to be, if it's a great person,
Yeah.
okay. So it's kind of like your poor King Shaul is hosed either way. Either the Nar is somebody who's greater than him, right?
Right.
In which case he's second fiddle here.
Right.
Or if the Nar is actually like a little kid, like hey you idiot, we've got
Right,
we've got a Navi here, and he's like, oh man, you might be 10, but you got some good ideas,
Right, exactly.
Now that seems to sort of paint him in an unflattering light.
It gets better or worse depending on your perspective. Hema olim b'ma'aleh ha'ir. So they're heading up to the city. Vehema matzu na'aros, and they find these girls yotzos lish'ov mayim, who are coming to draw out water. Vayomer lehem hayesh bazeh haroeh, and they say, is the roeh in town? That's why he's called a roeh. That was the okay. Now this is what is known in academic circles as a type scene. Jewish man meets a girl at a well. That's usually when people are getting engaged, right? That's the beginning of betrothal.
That's a love story.
Right. That's a love story. What you're going to get here is what I would call an inversion of that whole thing. There is no love that's going on over here. The whole thing's going to break down into essentially comedic relief. And we'll see how in a minute. But I think that's, again, done purposefully to show you that Shaul is not like the Yaakovs of the world who, when they show up at a well, they're going to get betrothed. He is the opposite of that. He's not the hero. He's the unhero.
This is hard to digest, by the way.
I'm sorry.
It's fascinating, but
I calls them as I sees them.
Yeah, but King Shaul is they say unequivocally. Chazal say that this man was like a crazy level tzaddik,
for sure,
high level and now we're getting essentially a cartoon character we're getting essentially a picture of a dumb pretty boy.
Wait. We're going to redeem him, not this chapter, but we will redeem him.
Okay.
That's my goal.
Okay.
So they get to they get to the girls and they're like, "Hey, ladies, have you seen the roeh? V'tanena osam v'tomarna." And they respond to them and they say. And now what you're essentially getting is, I'm going to use the phrase Rav Matas used, a gaggle of giggling girls. Rav Matas Weinberg. What I'm going to try to do is read it the way he did, and it would really be better if we had 5 different people reading different lines. But essentially, what you're getting is a bunch of girls talking over each other.
Oh my God.
Right now, why are they doing that? Says the Medrash,
because
He's
Shaul
really
is
good
really
looking.
hot,
Right.
and they all want to talk to him, right?
Right.
So
So
that's
it's not
the
about
scene.
brains. It's
Not about right. That's where I'm getting to. But the reason it's not about the brains is because Shaul's not even the one who had the
Right.
idea
Prince
to go.
Valium.
Yeah, right. He wasn't the one that had the idea to go see Shmuel. He was the guy who had to get led by the nar. But Taneo Samatomarna, Yesh Hine lefanecha Maherata Ki Hayom Bala'ir Ki Zevach Hayom La'am Babama. Kevoachem ha'ir came timtzu unoso b'term yaleh habamasa le'echol ki lo yachol ha'am ad bo ki hu yivarech hazevach achrei chen yochlu hakruim v'ata alu ki oso ka'ayom timtzu unoso. I'm just going to breeze through the translation here. Yes, they replied, he is there up ahead of you. Hurry, he has just come to town because the people have a sacrifice at the shrine today. As soon as you enter the town, you'll find him before he goes up to the shrine to eat. The people will not eat until he comes, for he must first bless the sacrifice, and then will the guests eat. Go up at once, you will find him right on the way. The
You
idea
did a good
here is
impression, by the way, of the gaggle giggling
yeah,
crow.
right. The idea here is they're just spewing information at him because they're super giddy and excited to talk to him. But yeah, Alu Ha'ir, and so Shaul and his guy are like, great, thank you for the information.
Incidentally, I don't know if this. I know this is a sidebar and probably irrelevant,
But
in fact, that as a point of fact that they say that he's like exceedingly handsome and all that, are we perhaps postulating that this is the classical definition of handsome, like fat, like Rabbi Yochanan? Like, could he be like 6'7" and also 350?
like poor,
Right. I'm just wondering because
make a difference.
right. I know it doesn't make much of a but I'm
you're
just
just
curious.
I don't know.
I'm curious because
I can't answer that.
Rabbi Yochanan was like big dude.
So
Big,
I will tell you, the Gemara describes Shaul. The beauty of Shaul is like a reflection of the beauty of God, and they get that from this idea of Mishichmo Vamala. V'yalu ha'ir hema ba'im betoch ha'ir v'hinei Shmuel yotzei l'krosam la'alos abama. And so the second they walk in, Shmuel is walking out to meet them, heading up to the altar to offer the sacrifice. All of this we will see in 30 seconds is all pre-planned. So Shmuel, it's like those movies where the guy, like, you have the wise sage walking with someone and he puts out his hand and like immediately food like falls into the hand and he hands it to him, right? Everything's like pre-planned, like, oh, how did he possibly know? He's everything he's going to do now shows that he knows the future. That's essentially what we're going to get here. And now, again, the narrator is giving you backstory. By the way, Shmuel knows everything that's about to happen because God told him everything that's about to happen. I'm going to send a guy from Binyamin to you tomorrow. Umashachto lenagid alami Yisrael. I want you to anoint him as the nagid. We're going to assiduously avoid the word melech, right? He's going to be the ruler over the Jewish people. V'hoshia esami miyad plishtim, and he will save my people from the plishtim. Ki ra'isi esami ki ba tza'akaso elai, because I saw my people and their cry has come before me. This language is very similar to what we get by Moshe in Shmos. That God says, their cry has come out to me, and I need to send someone to save them, and he will fight against the Plishtim or the Egyptians.
Isn't this a time that they're kind of safe from the Plishtim?
That's a great point. Chazal talk about that we had before when Shmuel conquered the Plishtim. The pasuk told us, and that was it. The Plishtim were kind of under the thumb of the Jews for the whole time that Shmuel. So the answer that they give is, yeah, but once Shmuel was no longer the ruler, then the
They
Plishtim
started antics again.
Right. So here you also get the sort of, if Muhammad won't come to the mountain will come to Muhammad, right? If
Somebody's got an emergency, I just
go for it.
Sorry.
So if Shmuel's not going to go find the Melech, then we'll send the Melech to Shmuel. So Ushmuel ra'a es Shaul. Shmuel sees Shaul, v'Adonai anehu, and then God declares to him, Hinei ha'ish asher amarti elecha ze ya'atzor ba'ami. This is the guy that I told you, he's going to be ya'atzor ba'ami. This is a really weird word. He's not the Nagid, he's not the Melech, he's Yatzor. What is Yatzor? So the Shoresh there is like Atzar, to stop, right? Mm-hmm. The way they translate it over here is govern, but essentially he's going to, to me this reads again as another dig against Shaul. Usually the leader leads, right? He takes you to progress further. Shaul is not going to be the leader. He's going to be the stopper. He's like the backstop of the people. He's going to be the person who is Yatsur. He stops the people. I don't know what he stops them from when you're supposed to be leading them, but
Like leading from behind.
yeah, something like that. Leading from behind. I like that. Let's see how much longer this parak is, because I know we're a little late. Are you good to stop here? You want to keep going? It's up to you.
So, unless Charles left, you think? No.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll pick up next time.
Very good.
Okay, that's it for now. I'm so glad you were able to join us on this holy quest for a better understanding of Hashem's Torah.